In our last episode, the first episode of this series, we replicated the first segment of the Carpentersville to Yorkville trolley system, traveling by bicycle from the heart of Carpentersville on the west side of the Fox River, through West Dundee, then across the Fox River on the former Dundee Trestle, to the Fox River's east bank, where we then traveled southward to Trout Park, a former beer garden and amusement park, today a nature preserve, a ball field, and part of the Elgin Park District.
In Part 2 of our Fox River Trolley series, we will explore the street railway system of Elgin, describe the city's origins and early history, and then follow the main route of the Elgin, Aurora, and Southern Traction Railroad from northeast Elgin through southwest Elgin. We will also investigate the Elgin Substation, built by the AE&C in its prime, but perhaps not for the reasons one might expect.
In addition to the sources cited in our previous video, primary sources for this video include the Elgin History Museum, the 4-volume set, The Aurora Elgin Area, Streetcars and Interurbans, by Hopkins Stolp Peffers, published in 1993.
From Trout Park, we will leave the Fox River Trail, instead traveling along Duncan Avenue. This is not the best road for biking, as the road has no shoulder. And this is actually truer to the original trolley line than the Fox River Trail along this stretch, as the former Fox River railway bed was transformed into a public road following the Carpentersville to Elgin abandonment in 1933. We travel for about a half a mile before reaching Congdon Avenue, which represents the northeast limit of the former Elgin Street Railway system.
The Elgin Street Railway system consisted of more than 14 miles of trackway within Elgin city limits. About 9 miles of trackage was situated on the east side of the Fox River, consisting of 5 lines: the Douglas Line and the Dundee Avenue Line, which formed a loop, the Park Street Line and the Chicago Street Line heading to the east, and the Grove Avenue Line heading to the southeast. On the west side of the river, which was originally planned as the more residential portion of Elgin, the trolley system consisted of approximately 5 miles of trackage, separated into 5 lines: the North State Line heading north, the Wing Park Line to the northwest, the Highland Line to the west, and the Walnut Avenue Line and the South State Line to the south. The 2 sides of the system spanning the Fox River were joined via the bridge at Chicago Street.
The central point of this trolley system, its axis mundi, was Fountain Square, originally called Market Square, today the intersection of Chicago Street, Douglas Avenue, and Grove Avenue. From this point, you could travel by trolley north, south, east, and west to the furthest extent of the system and the city. This was the center of the community, where most business was done, where civic parades and events were held, where Elgin's good and great came to be seen. The triangular square was framed by the Union National Bank on the southeast corner, the First National Bank and a drugstore on the west corner, and the Home National Bank of Second Empire design on the north side. The Home National Bank eventually demolished their elegant building, and replaced it with a new, imposing 15-story Art Deco building in 1929 at a cost of over $900,000, or about $13 million in 2025 money. It was completed just in time for the U.S. stock market crash, the closure of the bank in January of 1932, and subsequent foreclosure of the building.
Elgin's earliest trolley system, Payne's horse trolley, passed along this stretch and through this square, starting at National Street to the south, fronting the National Watch Factory, extending northward for a little more than a mile along Grove toward Summit Street, passing through Elgin's busiest business section. Bruce Chester Payne was born in Herkimer County, New York in 1834, came to Sycamore, Illinois in 1855, was a veteran of the U.S. Civil War, serving as quartermaster of the 14th Illinois Cavalry. He married Nellie Baker in 1866, moved east to the fledgling village of Elgin, then took a job as a railway postal clerk, which frequently took him between Elgin and Ottawa, Illinois. He opened a horse livery stable at about this time, positioned about one city block south of Fountain Square, on the west side of Grove Avenue.
In 1876, at the age of 41, amidst much public ridicule, the enterprising Payne obtained a 50-year franchise from the city of Elgin for the construction and operation of a horse-drawn trolley. This may have seemed a good idea to him, as a horse-drawn trolley system was industry adjacent to his livery stable business. It took him more than 2 years to build his simple trackway along Grove Avenue to Chicago Street and Douglas Avenue. He stopped going further as he had apparently simply run out of materials, wood ties and rails. However, a few years later, in the middle of the night and with a workforce of men, Payne created local excitement when he surreptitiously expanded his trolley tracks northward from Grove Avenue and Chicago Street on Douglas Avenue, so as to avoid objections of local business owners. He then continued to push his railway north to Ann Street, then eastward to Dundee Avenue, continuing northeast to about Summit Street. In 1885, he extended his line eastward along National Street, perhaps in hopes of connecting it to a larger interurban system. He is said to have dreamed of creating an electric interurban from Elgin to Chicago, connecting into his trolley system along Villa Street.
Although Payne's trolley system proved to be a better business value than most had originally conjectured, Payne's was a modest enterprise, without the means to expand significantly further, although many residents of Elgin desired it. Nor did he have the means to upgrade to an electric trolley system, a technology then coming to the fore, as it would have required an extensive and heavy capital investment for power plants, electrical infrastructure, and electric-powered rolling stock. He was essentially a one-man enterprise, being the company president, secretary, and treasurer, and owning 18 horses and 5 trolley cars. But much to the chagrin of his patrons, Payne's system was often unreliable. During inclement weather, Payne was known to simply shut his trolley system down rather than deal with the elements. It raised such anger and dissatisfaction that a few Elgin aldermen threatened to tear up his trackway and toss it in the Fox River.
By the latter part of the 1880s, there was sufficient dissatisfaction so as to create an opportunity for a few other local business enterprises, which hoped to prize his trolley franchise, the only one granted in Elgin, from his reluctant hands. One new street railway enterprise, the Elgin City Railway Company, was incorporated in late 1886, with local industrialist George P. Lord as its chief investor, and backed by $50,000 in capital, or about $2.3 million in today's money. But perhaps cowed by Payne's threats of lawsuits, as well as onerous constraints imposed by the Elgin City Council, the new company, now being led by William Grote, moved cautiously forward. As they wavered, another streetcar company was incorporated in July of 1889, the Elgin Rapid Transit Company, raising $150,000, or about $7 million in today's money, in capital stock. Although the Elgin City Railway had the advantage of knowing the landscape, the Elgin Rapid Transit Company had the upper hand in funds. Meanwhile, Bruce Payne now sat in the advantageous position of owning something desired by two competing companies.
For a few months in 1889 at least, it appeared that the upstart Rapid Transit Company would win the prize. But Grote's Elgin City Railway pulled a rabbit out of their hat when the Elgin City Council granted them a street railway franchise in late September 1889, with the condition that the company build at least 4 miles of an electric trolley system by the autumn of 1890. It did not hurt their case that William Grote, the president of the Elgin City Railway, had also been recently elected the mayor of Elgin. The reluctant Payne had apparently come to terms with Elgin City Railway, selling his trolley enterprise and franchise to them for $30,000 to $40,000 in cash and company stock, on the order of $2 million in today's money. Not a bad haul for a postman.
As the Elgin City Railway moved quickly to build their new electric road, its victory was marred by charges of foul play and corruption, with suggestions and accusations that the mayor and some aldermen were into shady dealings with the railway. Undeterred, the railroad company commenced building in April of 1890, along with the construction of a new power plant along the Fox River, just north of Dexter Avenue, on the east side of Grove Avenue, where the Illinois District Court building stands today. The utilitarian power plant, 125 feet square, was completed within the span of 90 days and housed 4 50-kilowatt generators, creating 520 volts of direct current, powering both the railroad and over 5,000 city streetlights.
By early August of that year, most of the streetcar system was operational, providing about 11 miles of streetcar service to patrons, 3 to 4 times that of Payne's trolley. The system had about a dozen cars in service, each equipped with 2 15-horsepower electric motors, and with typical speeds of about 10 to 12 miles per hour. By December, trolley cars were averaging revenues of $25 per day, or roughly $1,000 per day in today's money. The streetcar system was so successful that even in its earliest days, there was talk of expanding southward to Geneva.
The car house for the Elgin City Railway was a substantial brick structure, about 50 feet wide by 180 feet deep, and included a smaller side facility for car repairs and painting. The building was located on the east bank of the Fox River, on the west side of Grove Avenue, between National Street and Lake Street, about where the Grand Victoria Casino building stands today. The building stood until at least 1967, as indicated by aerial photographs, and likely met its demise in the 1980s.
A relic that has survived from the trolley days of the AE&C is the AE&C Substation, which was more associated with the City of Elgin and Fox River trolley system than the 3rd Rail Division. The Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Railroad realized early on that its Batavia power plant was producing far more electrical power than they would need for their interurban connecting Chicago to the Fox River, as well as a trolley system between Carpentersville and Yorkville. They next set about providing electrical power for related traction systems, extending to Belvedere and to DeKalb, and for the new 3rd Rail branch from Pleasant Hill to Geneva. Even with those extensions, they still had far more power than they needed, and thus began to get into the power business for the many communities that they already served for transportation. The city of Elgin already had a power plant, built for their street railway system around 1890, but which by now had become somewhat antiquated.
The Elgin government consulted with the AE&C, who proposed to provide them with electric power for lighting and general usage, at 30% less cost than they were able to generate for themselves. When this contract with the City of Elgin was secured, the AE&C built a new power substation in 1908 at 77 Riverside Drive, fed by three-phase 26,000-volt, 25 hertz current with 3 wires extending from the Clintonville substation, about 2.5 miles to the south. At the new power station, the electrical current was transformed to 60-cycle alternating current at 2,300 volts for distribution throughout the city, primarily for industry, as well as direct current to power more than 450 magnetite arc city streetlights, the latest in lighting technology. The direct current for street lighting was protected by an 8-amp backup storage battery to ensure continuous lighting during the somewhat frequent power outages.
Ah, crap! We're all doomed!
It is unclear how long this backup storage system provided power, but likely not for very long, perhaps 30 to 60 minutes, as the quantity of storage batteries was probably not very large in number.
During our research of the Elgin Substation, to our surprise, we also may have uncovered new details regarding the Prince Crossing substation, as to why it may have had a battery room. It's always interesting to us to see how these stories are interconnected and in unexpected ways. It turns out that the AE&C added another high-voltage power line to the Elgin Substation in the 1912 timeframe, this time directly from Ingleton or Prince Crossing, thereby creating a redundant power loop to supply the city of Elgin. Period diagrams suggest that the Ingleton substation was uniquely provided with a battery bank as redundancy to be used during power outages for the Elgin street lighting. And so it's also very possible that the large west addition of Prince Crossing was added earlier than we thought, in the 1910 to 1915 timeframe.
In November of 1922, while in receivership, the Aurora, Elgin, and Fox River Electric Company was notified that the defunct AE&C would no longer be providing power to them via their Batavia power plant, with the utility contract expiring on January 1, 1924. Thus, they lined up a new supplier, the Western United Gas and Electric Company, which had a substation in Aurora, and which in turn had to double their capacity by adding new turbine alternator units.
The AE&FRE also had to construct 2 new automated substations in Batavia and St. Charles, and rehabilitate the Elgin Electric Substation on Riverside Drive, in addition to installing a new power transmission line from Aurora to the Elgin Substation. In the mid-1930s, in spite of major portions of the Fox River trolley system being shut down, the Elgin Substation equipment was modernized, as this substation continued to provide power to the city of Elgin. The substation building still stands proudly on the east bank of the Fox River, along Riverside Drive, a relic of the AE&C and the AE&FRE and the early days of Elgin electricity.
Once the Fox River trolley system was purchased and consolidated with the Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Interurban Railroad, there were 2 primary railway interchanges between the 3rd Rail Division and the Fox River Division, one located at Aurora and one at Elgin. A third was in Geneva, but that's a story for another day. The Elgin connection was just a few hundred feet southwest from Fountain Square, just south of the Chicago Street Bridge. Riders could purchase tickets and wait for connecting trains at a storefront along Grove Avenue, just north of the Grand Opera House entrance. Trains could be accessed by passing out the back door of this building to the tracks, to what is today Riverside Drive. Here, riders could streetboard onto an AE&C train car, whisking them eastward to Wheaton and thence to Chicago, at speeds of up to 60 to 70 miles per hour.
Although prosperous at first, as the years rolled on, the AE&C struggled financially, going into receivership in 1919. When it came out of receivership, it was parceled into 2 companies, mirroring the original construction of the railroad and its subsequent internal partitioning, that being the 3rd Rail Division and the Fox River Division, which included the Elgin City Railway and streetcar system. Our viewers know that the 3rd Rail Division was famously purchased by Robert Money Stinson and Dr. Thomas Conway Jr. in July of 1922, rebranding it as the Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin Railroad. By the way, the 40-year-old Conway of Pennsylvania was not a medical doctor, but a PhD in business finance who preferred that people referred to him as doctor. Stinson, a 39-year-old affluent Philadelphia broker, managed to get himself killed in a runaway horse riding accident at the time of the sale, leaving the CA&E to rebuild under Conway.
The former Fox River Division, in the meantime, was sold to the Western United Gas and Electric Company several months later in 1923, the very utility company that the Fox River Division had previously enlisted to be their electric power supplier. Wealthy Chicago industrialist Samuel Insull acquired the CA&E in March of 1926, as well as the Aurora, Elgin, and Fox River Electric Company in November of 1927, adding both companies to his formidable utility and railroad empire. Too bad he did not do so earlier, as Insull could have purchased both of these companies for a bargain price in the early 1920s.
As streetcar fares fell off in the latter part of the 1920s, followed by a devastating blow from the Great Depression in the early 1930s, the Aurora, Elgin, and Fox River Electric struggled mightily to stay afloat, but it was to be a losing battle. In November of 1934, the Elgin Street trolley system of the company was formally discontinued, ending a run of 45 years of operation, more than 55 years including the Payne trolley system. Shortly after the abandonment of the Elgin Street Railway, the AE&FRE commenced bus routes in its stead.
The city of Elgin has deep roots in the history of the region and Kane County, Illinois. Shortly after Native Americans were forcefully driven out of Kane County in Illinois via the Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the Treaty of Chicago in 1833, 2 brothers and their families, 35-year-old James Talcott Gifford and his wife Laura Raymond Gifford, and 25-year-old Hezekiah Gifford and wife Mary Jane Smith Gifford, traveled via ship and wagon from New York to Chicago, arriving in the mid-1830s. They had been drawn to the area by the notion of establishing a settlement along the Chicago to Galena stagecoach route, and where they believed that a bridge could be built across the Fox River. Early settler James Fearson aided them in locating a suitable location, 9 miles to the north of St. Charles. Gifford also quickly established a U.S. post office here in 1837, amongst the earliest in Kane County.
Railroads soon followed the stagecoach trails. The Galena and Chicago Union Railroad sought to connect the fledgling Chicago with one of the largest cities in Illinois at that time, which was Galena in Joe Daviess County, where a boom in lead ore mining brought people from east, north, and south. The Galena and Chicago Union reached Elgin in 1849, later becoming the Chicago and Northwestern in 1865. Another railroad followed shortly thereafter. The Fox River Valley Railroad provided a north-south route along the east side of the Fox River, from Streator, Illinois to Geneva, Wisconsin, and was built in 1853.
Now blessed with 2 railroads, the ambitious Elgin incorporated as a city in February of 1854. By 1860, its population was approaching 3,000 residents. Dairy, wool, and food packing were 3 of its early industries, bringing in agricultural products from surrounding localities. A 3rd railroad, the Chicago and Pacific, which later became the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul, arrived in 1873, providing another and even faster route to Chicago, which became critical for transporting fresh milk and dairy products from Elgin to its fast-growing neighbor to the east. The three railroads also accommodated ironworks, metal foundries, farm implement factories, shoe factories, and other businesses.
But perhaps Elgin's most iconic industry, for which it was to become known worldwide, was that of watch manufacturing. The National Watch Factory was established here, to the south of the city, on the east bank of the river in 1865, built on 35 acres of land donated by the city as an inducement, by Benjamin Wright Raymond and others. As it happens, Raymond was also one of the early mayors of Chicago. By 1871, the factory provided work for more than 600 employees, producing 200 watches per day. Within a few years, its watches became so well known for quality and value that the name Elgin became synonymous with pocket watches. And so the National Watch Company rebranded as the Elgin National Watch Company in 1874. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, people were purchasing their Elgin watches from the Sears Roebuck catalog, a mail-order retailer, the Amazon warehouse of their day, for $8 to $10, or about $250 to $300 in today's money, which was a considerable purchase for most families. Wound up by the expansive Elgin Watch Factory, by the turn of the century, Elgin boasted a population of 26,000 residents, among the largest cities in Illinois.
In 1910, the Elgin National Watch Factory, by now world-renowned as a timekeeping authority, built the Elgin Observatory on Watt Street in Elgin, less than 1,000 feet from their factory, as a means of more accurately synchronizing their timekeeping equipment with astronomical events. The building yet stands today and is part of the Elgin School District U46, serving as a planetarium. The structure was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1994.
At about the same time, the company also began to host the Elgin Road Races in Elgin, where they would feature their timepieces and timekeeping as part of the record keeping for the race and the contestants. The race consisted of 36 laps around an 8-mile course to the west of Elgin, from McLean Boulevard west over Highland Avenue to Coombs Road, then back along Route 20. The annual race attracted some of the biggest names in automobile racing at the time, and some of the largest automobile manufacturers in the world, including Ford, Chevrolet, Stutz, Duesenberg, Mercer, Marmon, and Hudson. The Elgin Watch Company offered a $1,000 first prize to the race winner, about $24,000 in today's money, along with the distinction of winning in such a prestigious event. Thousands of people from the Chicago metro area attended the race every year, with headline news appearing in Chicago newspapers. But the races lost favor in the latter years of the 1910s due to the immediacy of the Great War in Europe, as well as multiple fatal accidents that marred the event. The car races were generally discontinued after 1920, but at least one more race was run in 1933.
After the onset of the Great Depression in 1930, which caused a massive economic slump throughout the United States for several years, the Elgin National Watch Company saw sales decline as a result of competition from Swiss companies and others. During World War II, the company transitioned to producing military-grade watches, chronometers, and timekeeping equipment, but then had difficulty transitioning back to consumer-grade wristwatches after the war. The vaunted Elgin factory ceased production in 1965, and the following summer, in 1966, the huge and empty facility was demolished. The landmark clock tower, which fronted the building, brought down by explosives.
Elgin, which had a population in 1970 of about 56,000 residents, struggled through the latter part of the 20th century, as many of its manufacturing jobs had gone a journey, as the U.S. economy transitioned to a service economy. To help cities such as Elgin and other struggling river towns, the Illinois General Assembly passed legislation in January of 1990 to enable the creation of riverboat gambling casinos, legalized gambling establishments perched on riverbanks with one toe in the water, meant to draw in large numbers of customers in order to benefit local restaurants, hotels, and services. In 1994, the Grand Victoria Casino was built on the east banks of the Fox River in Elgin, straddling Grove Avenue, just a short distance north of the former Elgin factory site. The casino delivered as promised, bringing in 4 million people annually for a decade or more, floating the boat of neighboring hospitality businesses and services, and creating new jobs and a degree of prosperity. By 2010, Elgin's population had almost doubled from 1970, climbing towards 110,000 people.
In recent years, there has been continued growth and a burgeoning civic pride in Elgin, as seen in their expansive riverfront improvement projects, as well as new public buildings, such as the Gale Borden Public Library, built in 2003. Their economy has diversified to include finance and banking, medical care, education, and manufacturing. Metra provides passenger rail transportation to the city in the present day, while Pace, the suburban bus provider of the Northeastern Illinois RTA, operates about a dozen bus routes throughout the city. Today, the city of Elgin straddles 2 counties, Kane and Cook counties, and ranks as the 6th largest city in Illinois, at almost 115,000 residents.
Now we'll continue our ride, following the main route of the Fox River Trolley, passing north to south, through the Elgin streetcar system route. From Duncan Avenue in Congdon, we could turn right or left to follow the trolley line. To the left, heading east, would bring us to the Dundee Avenue line, where the trolley would turn southwest toward the heart of the city. But we will instead turn right, heading west along the Douglas line. We travel about 6 city blocks until we approach Prospect Boulevard. There was a street siding, a short stretch of dual trackway, between St. John Street and Prospect Boulevard. Here we turn left, heading south. You begin to get a sense that those streets that had a trolley line were wider than most, to accommodate the additional streetcar traffic. After 4 blocks, we turn right, heading west onto Lovell Street. Here was another street siding as we passed by the McKinley Elementary School. We turn south again onto Douglas Avenue. Note the wide street again. We travel for a half-mile along Douglas until we reach Kimball Street, demarking the edge of Elgin's business district and downtown area.
A few blocks south, the Douglas Line route passed by the Chicago and Northwestern Passenger Depot, just north of Dexter Avenue, today the parking area for the Elgin City Municipal Buildings. A few blocks more, we come to Elgin's Fountain Square, once the heart and nerve center of the city, and where all the city's trolley lines converged, from Douglas and Dundee Avenues to the north, Park and Chicago Streets from the east, and Grove Avenue and St. Charles Street to the south. Pondering Fountain Square and its mix of old and new, it is good to recall that James Gifford named the 1835 settlement for his favorite tune, a Scottish hymn, the Song of Elgin. Although there is a likely candidate for this composition, the one that we prefer is the Elgin tune, taken from a 1635 Scottish psalter.
Leaving Fountain Square, Chicago Street is today one way, heading east over the bridge. And so to replicate the old trolley line, we'll walk west across the Chicago Street Bridge. This bridge once saw extensive trolley traffic, passing to and fro throughout the day. The extensive streetcar system on the west side of the river passed into more residential areas, the Highland Line being one of the main routes. Along Highland Avenue, the route would turn north, the Wing Park Line, until it would reach Wing Street and Wing Park, where Elgin trolley patrons could link up with the Elgin Belvedere Interurban, heading northwest. From here, we'll turn south, following the South State Line along State Street, Illinois Route 31.
Just south of Chicago Street once stood the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Passenger Depot, where the metro station stands today, and which would have been another railroad link with the Elgin trolley system. The streetcar rails passed along the east side of State Street. About a half-mile south was another street siding, and where another branch route, the Walnut Avenue line, headed off west along Walnut Avenue to Wilcox. Further south, near Sooster Avenue, was another street siding. Passing this, we arrive near the end of the Elgin Street Railway system, about where U.S. Route 20 passes east-west.
A short distance past U.S. Route 20, on the west side of the road, is the next stop for the Fox River Trolley System, the Elgin Mental Health Center, formerly the Elgin State Hospital, and before that, the Northern Illinois Hospital and Asylum for the Insane. This facility first opened in 1872, although construction was not complete until 1874. Ever watchful for new industry and jobs, Elgin had won the location of the state facility after competing with many other communities in northern Illinois. The institution quickly grew in the succeeding decades to more than 1,000 beds, as the population of northern Illinois increased, and as care of the insane and infirm became more centralized. The hospital was renamed to the Elgin State Hospital in 1910, as the state charitable institutions were reorganized under a single board of administration. For the AE&FRE Fox River Division, this was a major stop in the early part of the 20th century, as it was something of a city within a city, transporting doctors and staff, patients and their relations, as well as freight cars carrying food and supplies.
Following World War I, more beds were added to care for veterans of the Great War. The facility continued to grow and saw its peak capacity in the mid-1950s, when it housed 7,700 patients and occupied more than 1,100 acres of land. Since then, due to age and neglect, most of the original hospital buildings have been demolished, and the north portion of the facility has been sold to the city of Elgin. However, the Elgin Mental Health Center still operates today, after more than 150 years, housing on the order of 500 patients and served by a large staff of physicians, nurses, and social workers.
In our next episode, we'll pass south through South Elgin and Coleman, and rediscover an intact and in situ segment of the original Elgin, Aurora, and Southern Traction Railroad. A hidden gem in plain sight, still operating and transporting patrons for almost 130 years.
As always, many thanks to our Be Historic channel community, our subscribers, our Super Thanks contributors, and our generous Patreon supporters. If you are enjoying these videos, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And if you're so inclined, consider supporting our channel via Patreon. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you, in a manner of speaking, in our next video adventure.